The words hung in the sterile air of the doctor's office, each a perfectly formed shard of ice. Advanced liver cancer. Metastatic. Doctor Chen pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his expression a carefully constructed mask of professional sympathy. Without aggressive treatment, which has its own risks, 6 months. Miss Tang, I'm very sorry. Tunja felt the clinical chill of the room seep into her bones. A cold dread crawled in her stomach, but it was immediately smothered by a white-hot wave of maternal ferocity. 6 months. 180 days. The number was an executioner's countdown. Her own mortality was a distant fog. The faces of her children were blazing sun. Her eyes, usually soft and serene, hardened with a despair so profound it looked like defiance. Back in her small, sun-drenched cottage nestled on the mountainside, the scent of crushed herbs filled the air. Her 5-year-old twins, Nuo and Nuonu, were crouched over a chip bowl, their small brows furrowed in concentration. They were brewing their latest alchemy formula to help Mama recover, a murky concoction of dandelions, clover, and a stolen teabag swirled in the bowl, a testament to their innocent love. Watching them, a painful decision solidified in her heart. They deserved more than a mother who was fading away. They deserved a complete childhood, a shield against the world she was about to leave. They needed a father. It's time, she whispered to herself, the words a bitter pill. At her announcement, the twins' eyes lit up. A daddy hunt. Nuo, the more thoughtful of the two, declared with solemn importance. Nuo, his fiery counterpart, pumped a small fist in the air. Daddy hunt begins. Their first and only target was the man whose face she had seen only once in a financial magazine, the man whose jade pendant matched the one she possessed. Shai Yuan, CEO of the formidable Jin Corporation. The gleaming expanse of chrome and glass that was the Jin Corporation lobby felt like another planet. Tunja, in her simple cotton dress, felt her courage waver. But Nuonu, unburdened by social anxieties, marched forward with the confidence of a tiny conqueror. I'm looking for my daddy, she announced to the cavernous space, her small voice echoing off the marble floors. Heads turned. A statuesque woman with a perfectly lacquered smile that didn't reach her eyes glided toward them. She was Shai Yuan's executive assistant, and her gaze raked over Tunja with undisguised contempt. I'm afraid you're mistaken, the assistant said, a voice dripping with condescension. Mr. Shai is a very busy man. Furthermore, he is engaged to the lovely Miss Aries Song. We have no time for such transparent schemes. She made a subtle gesture to security. Just as Tunja was about to pull her daughter away, a sudden hush fell over the bustling lobby. The ambient hum of conversation seemed to drop a full octave. The glass doors slid open, and Shai Yuan strode in. He moved with an economy of motion that bespoke absolute authority, his presence a palpable force that commanded the room's full attention. Dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his sharp jawline and obsidian eyes gave him an aura of untouchable power. For a single, suspended heartbeat, his gaze swept the lobby, and locked with Tangier's, the world fell away. It wasn't recognition. Not quite. It was something more primal, a jarring sense of resonance, as if a long-dormant string had been plucked somewhere deep inside him. He saw a flash of panic in her eyes before she quickly turned, grabbing Nuonu's hand to flee. Dad, Nuonu's voice, clear and insistent, pierced the silence. Shai Yuan froze. The word echoed in the vast space, settling in his mind with a puzzling weight. He watched the woman hurry her child out of the building, a strange, unfamiliar warmth blooming in his chest before being extinguished by cold logic. It was impossible. That evening, Tunja sat with her children, a worn copy of a fairy tale book open on her lap. And so, she said softly, her voice heavy with a meaning they couldn't possibly understand, Cinderella's father married a cruel, Wicked woman. The evil stepmother made her work all day and gave her nothing but rags to wear. Nuo and Nuo listened, their eyes wide with horror. The sterile air of the high-end pawn shop felt suffocating. Tunja clutched the cool jade phoenix pendant in her palm. Its familiar weight a painful reminder of why she was here. For Nuo and Bowsy. For their future. Her savings were gone. Bled dry by rent and medical consultations, and this pendant was her last resort. A final piece of a past she had tried to bury. "May I help you, miss?" the appraiser asked, his eyes lingering on her simple cotton dress with professional disdain. Before Tunja could answer, the bell above the door chimed, announcing a new arrival with a blast of expensive perfume. Aries' song, Shai Yuin's fiancé, swept in, her heels clicking like tiny hammers on the polished marble. Her gaze raked over the shop before landing on the jade in Tangia's hand. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up in disbelief, then narrowed into suspicion. Well, Aries' voice dripped with saccharine venom, loud enough for every customer to hear. "What do we have here?" She glided closer, a predator circling its prey. "Where did a shabby woman like you get a piece like that?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Don't tell me you stole it." "Oh, wait." She feigned a dramatic gasp. "I recognize that carving. That is a Shai family heirloom. A matched pair given only to the family heir. Are you trying to sell my fiancé's property?" The accusation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Whispers erupted around them. Tangia's face flushed with heat, a mix of shame and fury. "This is mine," she said, her voice a low tremor. "Yours," Aries laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. A thief and a liar behind Tunja. Hidden near a display case. 5-year-old Bowsy's eyes flashed with a mischievous, protective light. He nudged his twin sister, Nuo, and they exchanged a silent, telepathic command. A spark of unseen energy zipped across the room. Suddenly, Aries' song froze. Her arms snapped into an unnatural, theatrical pose, her hips beginning to sway to a frantic rhythm only she could hear. Her elegant posture contorted into the jerky, expressive movements of a Bollywood dance number, her head wobbling with a manic, joyful energy that was utterly at odds with the confusion on her face. The shop fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the squeaking of her designer shoes. Through the large storefront window, Tunja saw it. The gleaming silver hood ornament of a Rolls-Royce Phantom pulling up to the curb. Shai Yuin, her heart seized. Grabbing the opportunity, she snatched her children's hands. "Let's go now." They darted out a side exit, melting into the chaos of the street just as Shai Yuin's driver opened his door. Weeks later, Tunja was no longer just a desperate mother. She was Mystic Lan, a name whispered with awe in online forums. Her reputation had exploded after she'd used her gift to locate a missing child, an impossible feat that made headlines on city news blogs. Her small, humble fortune-telling stall was now perpetually busy. One afternoon, a sleek black sedan pulled up, and Shai Yuin's impeccably dressed assistant, Ken, stepped out. He wasn't alone. He respectfully escorted an imposing, silver-haired woman to Tangia's table. Matriarch Shai Yuin's formidable grandmother. The old woman's eyes, sharp and discerning, assessed Tunja from beneath heavy lids. "They say you can see what is hidden," she stated, her voice raspy with age and authority. "My grandson, the doctors have given him a barren future." "Tell me they are wrong." Tunja met her gaze, a current of understanding passing between them. She closed her eyes, letting the energy of the matriarch's desperation wash over her. Pictures flashed in her mind, to small faces, one boy, one girl, her children. "The Shai family line is not a barren tree, matriarch," Tunja said, her voice soft but certain. "Its roots have already split, and two new saplings are growing strong, though hidden from the gardener's eye. a boy and a girl. They carry the Shy legacy. Matriarch Shy gasped, her hand flying to her chest. The cold mask of doubt on her face shattered, replaced by a wave of raw, unadulterated joy. A sterile grandson with 2 descendants. It was a miracle. It had to be true. The summons came 2 days later. A car was sent to bring Master Lan to the Shy family mansion. Tunja disguised herself in a severe black pantsuit, pulling her hair into a tight bun and hiding her expressive eyes behind a pair of large, non-prescription glasses. This wasn't personal. It was a job. A very well-paying job. The matriarch had assured her, to help her grandson find a woman from his past. The money would secure her children's future for years. She just had to endure being in his presence one more time. She was led not to a sitting room, but to his private study. The room was dark, paneled in rich mahogany and smelling of old books and faint, expensive cologne. Shy Yuan stood by the window, a silhouette against the fading city lights. Master Lan, he said, turning. His voice was the same low baritone that haunted her dreams. His eyes swept over her, and for a fleeting moment, a flicker of confusion crossed his features. Tunja felt a jolt, a familiar magnetic pull she hadn't felt in 6 years. She forced her expression to remain a placid, professional mask. He gestured to a chair. My grandmother has great faith in your abilities. He walked to his desk and picked up a small, velvet pouch. From it, he produced a jade pendant, a dragon, intricately carved, the perfect match to her phoenix. Her breath caught in her throat. 6 years ago, he began, his tone cold and clinical. I had an encounter with a woman. I don't remember her face, but she left with the other half of this. He held up the dragon. Recently, I discovered evidence that a child may have resulted from that night. He paused, his jaw tightening. According to every doctor I've seen, that should be impossible. I'm sterile, and I have been since a childhood illness. He was staring at her, searching for a reaction. But Tangia's face was a fortress. Inside, her world was tilting on its axis. He thought he was sterile. I need you to find her, he commanded. Find the woman who holds the phoenix. Tunja took a slow, calming breath. This was her chance. She stood and walked to the desk, extending her hand not for the pendant, but to gesture over it, as if reading its energy. She closed her eyes, feigning deep concentration. The phoenix seeks its other half, she intoned, her voice taking on a mystical quality. The energy it flows eastward, toward the rising sun, where life begins anew. Shy Yuan's eyes narrowed, locked on her. East, that's it, that's all you have. For now, it is a powerful direction, Tunja said, opening her eyes. She met his gaze directly, her professional mask firmly in place. My initial consultation fee for divining this path is $1 million. A lesser man would have scoffed. Shy Yuan didn't even blink. The desperation for answers, for the truth of his impossible child, burned behind his cool facade. Done, he said. His voice clipped. He pressed a button on his intercom. Ken, wire $1 million to Master Lan, and get every available team mobilized. I want the entire east side of the city scoured. Every woman who fits the timeline, every child around the age of 5. Find her. As Tunja walked out of the mansion, the transfer notification pinging on her phone. A fleet of black cars was already roaring to life in the driveway, their headlights cutting through the dusk as they sped east directly toward the small, unassuming apartment where her 2 children were sleeping. The 6-year-old girl moved with the silent confidence of a cat, slipping past the wrought iron gates of the Shy mansion like a shadow. Nuonu had spent weeks studying the estate's routines, her research as meticulous as any corporate spy's. She found Shy Yuan in his study, a cavernous room of mahogany and glass overlooking a manicured garden. He didn't notice her until she stood directly before his massive desk. "Hello, Daddy," she said, her voice clear and without a hint of childish timidity. Shayuin looked up from his documents, his brow furrowing. The child was impossibly small against the grandeur of his office, yet her presence filled the space. He saw a flicker of a familiar face in her determined eyes. "Who let you in here? Where are your parents?" "My mother is at work," Nuonu stated calmly, "and you're right here." Our blood connection creates a strong yin-yang polarity. It's basic metaphysics. I felt it the moment I saw your picture. The words were absurd, yet a strange, undeniable warmth spread through his chest. He stood circling the desk and crouched down to her level. The clinical diagnosis he'd received years ago sterile screamed in his mind. A cold, hard fact. But as he looked at this little girl, at the stubborn set of her jaw that mirrored his own, doubt began to fracture that certainty. "What's your name, Nuonu?" He reached out, his hand hesitating before gently touching her hair. An unfamiliar current, warm and protective, shot through him. He stood abruptly, his voice regaining its command. "Assistant Lin, get in here. I need a priority DNA test. Now." He looked back down at Nuonu, a storm of suspicion gathering in his eyes. "Who is your mother, Nuonu? Tell me her name." Before she could answer, the doors burst open and his grandmother, Matriarch Shai, entered with a tray of desserts, her eyes lit up. "Oh, my heavens! Who is this precious doll?" "Nuonu, never one to miss an opportunity, Peem. I'm Nuonu, great-grandma. You have a very kind aura." The matriarch melted. Within minutes, Nuonu was perched on a velvet armchair, happily devouring a slice of black forest cake while Matriarch Shai promised her a private amusement park. Shayuin watched, his mind racing. This was impossible, and yet it felt irrevocably right. He pressed Nuonu again, his voice softer now. "Your mother, did she know about me? Did Tunja had to be her deliberately keep his child from him all these years?" Just as the question hung in the air, Tunja herself burst into the room, her face pale with panic. She had followed Nuonu's hastily scribbled note, her heart pounding with a singular, primal fear. They would take her children. "Nuonu," she cried, her eyes darting from Shayu into the opulent surroundings, seeing not a home but a gilded cage. She snatched her daughter's hand, pulling her away from the half-eaten cake. "We're leaving now, but Mama, great-grandma promised me a unicorn-themed roller coaster. Stay right where you are." Shayuin commanded, stepping in front of the door. His assistant entered at that moment, handing him a tablet. Shayuin's eyes scanned the screen, and the last vestiges of his doubt evaporated, replaced by a cold, possessive fury. He held the tablet up for Tonja to see, a 99.99% match. "You have some explaining to do, Miss Tang." The words hit her like a physical blow. It was real. Her secret was out. "A great-grandchild. I have a great-grandchild." Matriarch Shai clapped her hands, her gaze shifting from Nuonu to Tonja with complete approval. "Yuin, this is a sign from the heavens. You must marry this woman at once. We will welcome them into the Shai family." The matriarch's words were meant to be a blessing, but to Tonja, they sounded like a verdict. Marry him, be trapped by this powerful, domineering man who already looked at her as if she were a possession he'd just reclaimed. Her fear of men, of being controlled and having her children taken, overrode everything. "I won't let you," she whispered, pulling Nuonu behind her. Shayuin took a step forward, his hand outstretched. "Don't be ridiculous. Tanja, she's my daughter. You're both coming home." As his fingers brushed her arm, Tanja discreetly pressed a small, folded paper talisman into his palm. "Puppet," she muttered under her breath. For a split second, Shayuin's body froze, his limbs refusing to obey his commands. It was just enough time. Tanja scooped Nuonu into her arms and fled, leaving him standing rigidly in the hall, the faint scent of sandalwood from the talisman clinging to his skin. A slow, intrigued smile touched his lips. This was far from over. Days later, the midday sun beat down on the bustling town square where Tangier's modest fortune-telling stall stood as a small island of tranquility. A crowd had gathered, listening as she read a young woman's palm, her voice a low, soothing melody. She was good at her work, her mystical insights offering genuine comfort and clarity. Nuonu sat beside her on a small stool, diligently drawing protective symbols on scraps of parchment. The peaceful atmosphere was shattered by the screech of tires. A luxury sedan pulled up to the curb, and Ares' song, her face a mask of vindictive rage, stormed out, followed by her equally furious mother. "There she is!" Ares shrieked, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Tanja. The crowd murmured, turning to watch the spectacle. The shameless homewrecker. Tanja stood slowly, placing a protective hand on Nuonu's shoulder. "You think you can just show up and steal my fiancé?" Ares advanced on the stool, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "And that thing," she snarled, gesturing at Nuonu, "parading your bastard child in front of him, trying to trick your way into a family you'll never belong to." The word bastard hung in the air, ugly and sharp. The onlookers gasped, their sympathy turning to shocked whispers. Tangier's face hardened. "You will not speak about my daughter that way. I'll speak however I want," Ares screamed. She turned to the two bodyguards who had followed her from the car. "Smash it. Smash all of this trash." The guards moved without hesitation, splintering the wooden table with a single, brutal kick. Talismans, incense, and crystals scattered across the pavement. The crowd fell back in horror. As Tanja knelt to shield Nuonu from the debris, Ares lunged forward. She grabbed a handful of Tangier's hair, yanking her head back, while her mother kicked at Tangier's legs. Nuonu, seeing her mother being attacked, did the only thing a 6-year-old could do. She ran at Ares, biting her leg with all her might. "Get off me, you little monster," Ares shrieked in pain and fury. Without thinking, she spun around and shoved Nuonu with vicious force. The little girl stumbled backward, her head cracking hard against the stone edge of a nearby fountain. She didn't make a sound. She simply crumpled to the ground. A small, still heap. A sudden, terrifying silence fell over the square. Tanja scrambled to her daughter's side, her hands shaking as she turned her over. Nuonu's eyes were closed, her face unnervingly pale. She was limp, unresponsive, a mother's protective rage transformed into pure, animalistic terror. Tanja cradled her daughter's small body, her breath catching in a sob. "Nuonu, Nuonu, wake up. Please, baby, open your eyes." But there was no response. The life, the spark, the precocious energy was gone. A primal scream tore from Tangier's throat, a sound of such profound agony that it silenced the entire square, a desperate cry for help that echoed off the cold, unforgiving stone. The screech of a limited edition sports car tearing into the hospital emergency bay sliced through the night. Doors flew open before the engine was cut, and Shayuin emerged, his bespoke suit a dark slash against the sterile white lights. In his arms, he carried Nuonu's small, still form, his face a mask of glacial fury. Ares, stumbling after him, reached out a trembling hand. "Jukin, I." She never finished. With a movement as swift as it was contemptuous, Shayuin kicked her designer handbag from her grasp, the contents scattering across the pavement like cheap confetti. He didn't even spare her a glance. "Get out of my sight," he snarled, the words low and vibrating with menace. He strode into the his presence parting the chaos like a king entering a throne room. "Get me the chief of pediatrics." Now, as doctors swarmed, He turned to find Aries hovering at the entrance, her face a pathetic canvas of feigned concern. He walked back to her, his shadow falling over her. "Listen to me. Aries' song," he said, his voice a chilling whisper that carried more weight than any shout. "If anything happens to my daughter, I won't just end our engagement. I will personally ensure the Song family name is erased from every business ledger and society column in this country. I will wipe you from the map." He left her there, trembling and pale, and slammed the privacy curtain of the examination room shut. Inside, Tanja was already by Nuonu's side, her hand resting on the child's forehead, a faint, calming energy seeming to emanate from her touch. Shai Yuin's gaze locked onto her, the fury in his eyes warring with a profound, aching confusion. He cornered her against the wall, his hands planting on either side of her head, trapping her. "You and I," he began, his voice rough with an emotion he couldn't name. "That night, 5 years ago, I remember it. Not your face, not your name, but a storm. The scent of rain and jasmine, a feeling of you in my arms. It's been a ghost in my mind ever since." "What did you do to me?" Tanja met his tormented gaze without flinching, her own eyes shimmering with unshed tears. This was it, the moment she had both dreaded and prayed for. "I did what I had to," she confessed, her voice barely audible over the beeping monitors. "My family's teachings, they are complex. I cast an oblivion spell on you, a psychic block. It was meant to protect us both, to let you live your life without the burden of a single night's mistake." "A mistake?" The words were torn from him, raw and disbelieving. "I have a son and a daughter. That was not a mistake. The spell was designed to break only if the conditions of that night were recreated," she explained, a desperate hope kindling in her expression. The same overwhelming emotion, the same proximity. He didn't need to hear more. Understanding and instinct collided within him. He leaned in, crushing his lips to hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a desperate, searching collision of past and present. It was the rain-soaked memory, the forgotten scent of jasmine, the phantom touch made real. In that moment, 5 years of fractured memories slammed back into place, a tidal wave of clarity. Her face, her whispered name, the promises he'd made in the dark, it all came flooding back. A soft groan broke them apart. On the bed, Nuonu's eyelids fluttered open. Her small, hazy gaze found them, still locked in their breathless embrace, and a tiny, knowing smile graced her lips before she drifted back into a peaceful sleep. Their family, fractured and lost, was finally beginning to stitch itself back together. Hours later, in a sun-drenched private suite of the Shai family mansion, Nuonu was propped up on a mountain of silk pillows, holding court. Shai Yuin's grandmother, matriarch Shai, had taken an instant and ferocious liking to the little girl. "Look at these lovely cheeks," the old woman cooed, gently pinching Nuonu's chin. "From now on, whatever you want, you tell Grandma. The finest dolls, the prettiest dresses, a pony. The Shai family will give its little princess the world." Shai Yuin watched from the doorway, a rare smile touching his lips. He remembered Nuonu's fierce declaration in the car. "Mommy likes to earn her own money." He respected that. Tanja wasn't like the women in his circle. She had a pride and power that was entirely her own. He wouldn't insult her by simply handing her a black card. He would give her a platform. He approached Tanja, who was observing the scene with a quiet, overwhelmed look. "There's someone I'd like you to meet," he said, his tone now laced with a protective warmth, "a family friend. He needs a specialist." He led her to the ground library, where a haggard man in his late 40s, Shangwon Rui, sat slumped in a leather armchair. Beside him stood a woman with sharp, critical eyes and a familiar sneer. "Aries' cousin, Milin." "This is Tanja," Shai Yuin announced, his hand resting lightly on her back. She may be able to help you with your ailment, Milan scoffed. Jekin, really, you're bringing in a fortune teller? Shangwon needs a real doctor. Not this fraud from the slums. Tanja ignored her, a focus entirely on the man. His aura was murky, tainted by a dark, clinging energy. It's a generational curse, Tanja stated calmly, her voice echoing slightly in the vast room. Inflicted 3 generations ago, it latches on to the firstborn son of each generation, causing chronic pain, misfortune, and eventually, blindness. Shangwon Rui's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. How did you know that? Because she's a charlatan making lucky guesses, Milan snapped. Tanja turned her gaze to Milan, her expression serene but her eyes holding an ancient, formidable power. You wish to see a demonstration? Without moving, Tanja lifted a hand. Mr. Shangwon, what do you see? Shangwon Rui gasped, blinking rapidly. Nothing. It's gone dark. I can't see. Panic seized him as he flailed a hand in front of his face. Milan paled. What did you do? I merely showed him what the curse's final stage looks like, Tanja said, her voice dropping slightly. And just as quickly, she lowered her hand. And now, color flooded back into Shangwon's world. The bookshelves, the ornate ceiling, Sha Yuin's steady face, it was all there, clearer than before. A wave of light seemed to wash through him, and for the first time in years, the gnawing pain in his joints subsided. He stared at Tanja, not with fear, but with utter astonishment and reverence. Incredible, he breathed. Sha Yuin stepped forward, placing himself firmly at Tanjia's side. His gaze swept over a stern Milan and a hopeful Shangwon Rui, a silent declaration of allegiance. Tanja will be handling Mr. Shangwon's case from now on, he stated, his authority absolute. Her fee will be 10 million, and my corporation will underwrite any and all liability. If anyone has a problem with that, they can bring it to me. He looked down at Tanja, his eyes conveying a message clear as day. You are not alone anymore. Welcome home.